brains on the opportunities. I think the challenges are well documented, and I think we know what they all are. But what we may not be aware of is how it affects you individually in your day-to-day work, and how in recent times you've been able to, answer the ask, especially for global companies like your own, Duncan, where people are asking, boards are asking, global boards are asking, what's happening in South Africa? What is this promise? How are you answering the question?
Yeah, and it's a great question, and of course, it's front and foremost in investors' minds. And this is not so much at the board level; it's about the people who invest in the company. And I have to say that the narrative in South Africa has deteriorated quite 5 years, and on a global stage, that plays out very negatively for investment in South Africa. And so, of course, I was asked a couple of days ago, and yesterday indeed, is South Africa investable? Because of the electricity situation, because of the logistics situation, because of the crime and corruption and all the lack of services and the inability to deploy healthcare and sanitation and sewage and water and so on and so on. What does that mean for business ultimately at the end? And I said, well, of course South Africa is investable, because I speak about it in exactly the same way as the president just spoke about it. So the raw and untapped potential that exists here. But of course, that story will start to wear thin unless we can demonstrate some tangible actions in closing the gap between the desire for a country that is growing in an inclusive and a transformative sort of way to the one that we actually experience today.
Right.
And so there are some real tangible action steps that need to be taken, measured in short time frames, a few quick wins that we need to achieve to be able to change and turn that negative investor sentiment and narrative around. And having said that, it was incredibly pleasing to hear what both the minister and the president said today. This focus, this laser-like focus on at least 3 of the major issues that are crippling the country today, and holding it back from achieving its potential, is now sort of front and foremost on the agenda item. And I think that this is not just the work of government. Government needs to be done. It needs to be done very effectively to get this done, but in collaboration and partnership with business, who I think stand absolutely ready to play their part in driving this turnaround.
Emery, as a financier for you, how does that play out when this conversation comes up? And as chief executive of RMB, you've got to, share the promise, like the president and the minister have just done, as well as what Duncan has done. How do you do that?
Yes, I think that it was really reassuring this morning to hear all the measures that the president spoke about that are being put in place. But I think for us, as a financial institution, the impact that we're just seeing on our clients is still significant. We do see, just as a consequence of load shedding, the reduction in our GDP growth for the year. It's a 1 percentage point reduction down to 0.4. That has got real consequences for companies that has to deliver to their investors. And then, as the president indicated, the 3 things that come to mind continuously is energy, the security, and logistics. But the other one that we are concerned about is water supply. And, all of those things don't only impact our companies, but it also impacts our people in South Africa.
Yep.
And, for us, what we see play out in our clients is it increases the cost of production. That obviously impacts our ability to compete internationally. And, I think for me, the way we see it is that for the future of South Africa, international investment is so important. And these challenges does make it difficult for us to position the potential of South Africa as an attractive investment destination, while there is this uncertainty as to when we will implement the reform. So it's wonderful to hear that, we're really talking between government and the private sector, but for us it is still a concern around the speed of implementation. And we do believe that if we can get these reforms in place, that we can really unlock the potential that South Africa offers, both local and international investors.
Speaking of the speed of reform, Minister Kupai, you have this other hat I referred to as I was asking you to come on stage. And I had a quick look at that ERRP document, the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan. And in it noted the consensus that there is between social partners around the structural changes that the economy needs to go through to unlock growth and allow for development. Now, we've got the report card from the Minister and the President about how we've done in the past 5 years in raising investment. Both CEOs have referred to these changes happening at the pace they need to happen. Duncan spoke about the response wearing thin unless there's action. Please share with us what this ERP has achieved to date and some of your reflections when you are asked a similar question. Is South Africa investable?
Thank you very much. I think the first issue for me is to acknowledge that part of what we had to deal with is COVID-19. And the ERRP, Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan, was as a response by government to say what is it that we need to do to recover the economy so that we can be able to see growth, not towards, not growth to pre-COVID, but even just making sure that we surpass the numbers that we had. There are quite a number of issues that we had put in place in terms of structural reforms that we put as a target. And I always say, if people say most of the time that government does not implement, one of the signs of implementation is ERRP, because in what we had committed there, 80% of that had been achieved, which in terms of school, it will be an A plus that we need to do. We said we'll raise the license in terms of embedded generation, it was done. We said we'll change the condition in terms of water license, it was done. We said we'll release the critical skills list, it was done. We said we'll improve in terms of the visa waivers and change the environment. We have increased the number of countries in terms of visa waivers. We said we will ensure that the spectrum auction happens, it happened. We said we'll finalize the white paper on rail, it was done. So there are quite a number of issues when you look in terms of the commitments against the RP has been done. And there are few that already you can see progress, either already in terms of legislation or policy. They are already in cabinet. For example, we've passed some of the white papers that we needed to do. So from policy point of view and changes in terms of regulator environment, we've been able to do. What was unfortunate, and that's why you could see last financial year, third quarter and second and fourth quarter, you could see the resilience of the economy in terms of economic growth, despite having high level of load shedding. It's because of some of these interventions that were done deliberately. But if we are, again, so I can talk about that in terms of achievements and work that has been done and monitoring. And I agree in terms of saying, when we put plans in place, what is important is the monitoring and evaluation. The reason why we saw success of ERRP is because there was constant monitoring both by the cluster itself in cabinet, but also by the president and cabinet. So we regularly reported, and that's why we could do even regular updates with Minister Mandasha in terms of how far we've been. Now, in terms of the story around investing in South Africa, one of the things that I say is that we tend, yes, as you said, we tend to focus on the negative, which we must pay attention to. But there are quite a number of things that make South Africa a good area of investment, which sometimes we don't talk about. We have a judicial system that is functioning. This is important for business because you know when you invest in South Africa and you are done hard by, you have where to go and find justice. In other countries and some, you don't find. You don't have an environment where you can wake up and get a tax or even something that you must pay that you don't know how it did. There's law and processes. So SARS doesn't wake up and say you owe tax without you understanding, which we see in other countries where companies are asked to pay money that sometimes they can't explain. In South Africa, we can safely say it will not happen because we have laws. So there's an environment that is conducive for business to happen. Yes, we do have challenges around what President raised, around the construction mafias, for example, and that is being paid attention to so that we have a holistic, secured environment, and that's what we talk about, securing the economy. because it's critical for us to secure the economy so that businesses do not feel issues around threatened in terms of law enforcement and all that.